Vani Hari, thank you so much for being with me on The Genius Life.
I'm so excited to be here, Max. It's so good to sit down and talk with you. I've been wanting to come out to LA for quite a while to have this in person, and I'm sad we have to do it so remote.
I know, but it's okay. We're recording video, and at some point in the hopefully not too distant future, we'll get an in person hang. But I've been a fan of yours for a while. You're like an OG in the space. So,
Gosh, I never felt so old in my life.
no, you're not. You're young and sprightly and beautiful, but I mean, like you've been making waves in the wellness community and also in the world at large for like a long time. So I just want to like celebrate you for that. That's so cool.
Oh, I really appreciate that. I don't think anyone's ever said that to me, so thank you.
Um, you have this new cookbook out, Food Babe Kitchen, which is beautiful. I'm looking at it right now. It's a really gorgeous book. But before we get into, what inspired it and the kinds of foods that you and dishes that you have in here, for listeners who are not that familiar with your work, let's go into the backstory a little bit. How did Vani Hari become Food Babe?
Well, that's a great question. So, I grew up with two immigrant Indian parents. And when my dad married my mom in an arranged marriage, he brought my mom back here for her honeymoon and their honeymoon. And the first thing he introduced my mom to was McDonald's hamburger. He says, if we're going to live in America, we're going to eat like Americans. And that's how I was raised. And growing up in the South, we were one of the only Indian families, and I wanted to fit in. I wanted to eat what everybody at school was eating. I didn't want to eat the homemade Indian, smelly, kind of curry-induced stuff that my mom kept cooking at home. And, they just wanted to do what was, easy for their kids. And so, we ate a lot of fast food, a lot of things that we would get from the grocery store because my mother didn't have those homemade American recipes that were passed down to her. And so she didn't know how to make all the standard stuff. But I wanted to eat it. So she would just rely on the Betty Crockers of the world and the Hamburger Helper and the Salisbury steak that you get in the microwave, in the freezer pack, and you microwave. And I grew up on, all those mozzarella sticks and all the things you could put in the Fry Daddy and the Debbie cakes, like everything, right? I mean, my entire diet probably for 20 years was very heavily processed. And they just, didn't know any better because, where they grew up in India, everything was made from scratch. You shared a cow, you shared the amount of dairy that cow produced, and you used dairy like a condiment. You had fresh fruits and vegetables that you would get from the market every single day to make your foods. There wasn't a lot of refrigeration were in their town, and they didn't have a big refrigerator where they could store a lot of food before it went bad. So they would cook fresh every single day. And even today, my mother still does that, which is just hilarious to me because she always thinks like things go bad within like a day. But I'm like, Mom, you can leave leftovers in the fridge for a couple days and be okay. And and so I had a ton of health issues as a child, and my parents, being any good parents, of course, did what any good parents do, which is take your children to the doctor. And these doctors put me on several prescription drugs to fix these health ailments, things like eczema and asthma and horrible allergies and sinus issues and all stomach issues, all sorts of things. And I just took these prescription drugs because I thought, this is what's going to help me get better. And it wasn't until I hit rock bottom in my early 20s where I was working in the corporate world. I'd gotten a really fancy job out of school, being on an expense account and traveling with my whole group of work people and, working for these C-level executives and, having access to all of these fancy steakhouses, which we never got to eat at those kind of things when I was little. I mean, the fanciest thing that I ever ate was like Quincy's, where it was the all you could eat buffet with with the yeast rolls, right? So, I was suddenly able to eat at all these fancy restaurants on the expense account, and I just started gaining weight like crazy, started to feel really bad about myself, ended up in the hospital with appendicitis. And I was in my early 20s, and all I wanted to do was like go out and meet boys and hang out with my friends. And it was the holiday season, and there was all these holiday parties, and I'm in the hospital just, trying to get better from this surgery. And it took me weeks, and it gave me a lot of time to think. And I just decided at that moment that I don't want to look like this. I don't want to feel this way. And, at the time they tell you when you get your appendix out, they say, especially back 20 something years ago, they tell you, hey, this is random. This is something that could happen to anybody. You don't need your appendix. But all modern science today actually talks about how your appendix is actually there for a reason. It's a reserve for good bacteria in your body to constantly populate your gut with good bacteria. And if that gets inflamed and you remove that, holy crap, that's not good, right? So I had a lot of healing to do. And the first thing I did was go and research. And this is just a skill that I learned in high school, where I was a debater. I was #1 in state 3 years in a row, and recruited to college to be in debate. And I think that's what makes me such a good activist, because it's a lot of debating against the food industry, right? Or debating in front of the media. And so I started to research, and one of the first books I came across was called Conscious Eating. And in this book, they had this concept that the majority of things on grocery store shelves and in grocery store freezer sections are dead food. It's not alive. And that just rang a bell in my head. And I said, everything that I've been eating for most of my life has been dead. It hasn't been alive. And that's actually exactly how I felt, dead like a zombie. And so I started to make a change. And that is when I woke up from my slumber, and I just said, enough's enough, and started to make changes, and everything changed, Max. I mean, I went off 9 prescription drugs. All the weight came off. I never had to diet again. All I was doing was eating real food instead of things in a package. That's all I was doing. Not even eating 100% organic at that point, just eating real food. And to eventually to really, get my body up a notch, I ended up, switching to an organic diet and learning about all the things that go into the creation of our food and all the chemicals that are used in the production of our food, and became very knowledgeable about that, and just decided, organic's the way to go. And so I switched to an organic diet. And doing that at the time was very difficult, because I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, where, I didn't live in LA. I didn't have an Erewhon,
Yeah.
I didn't even have a Whole Foods back then. We just had these tiny little natural food stores, and you would go in and you'd be like, what are these brands? Where's the Kellogg's? Where's the Coca-Cola? Where's the Pepsi? I didn't recognize any of the brands. And I mean, quinoa, what was that?
Right.
And so, I feel like I was the first person to eat quinoa in Charlotte, no, but I wasn't, but, because there was obviously other people at those natural food stores before me. But I, in terms of my age group, yeah, I felt like I was the first person to eat quinoa. And it took, I think because I wasn't kind of given all of the resources, I had to figure out how to live this organic lifestyle, but in this very non-organic world, because I was still in the corporate world, working for these C-level executives, working 60-hour weeks, traveling on the road, traveling to and from all these different cities. And people thought I was crazy, Max. I was packing stuff in a cooler and carrying it on board with me and stuff for my week's stay in Detroit. And people were like, what are you doing? And I was like, listen, in my office building, in the big GM building, there's Subway and Burger King. And I'm not going to eat those things. And the little natural salad bar place, their soup has MSG. I'm not going to eat that every day. So I'm going to just freeze my soup, bring my salads, do whatever I can, pack it in my cooler. And because it was frozen, I got through security just fine. And people couldn't believe that I would take a whole cooler of food and get it through security. And sometimes I would check it too. I had this little rolling cooler. I would also check if I knew I had too many liquids. And I literally would just stock the office pantry and the office refrigerator with all my food. And I mean, people looked at me like I had 5 heads. They're like, you're bringing your own food from your house all the way to work. I mean, this is crazy. So people around me at the office saw what I was doing, and they were like asking questions like, what is this green shake you're bringing? And what is the stuff you're eating? And, you know, it must be really good for you to like bring it from home. And it smelled great. And, you know, I'd warm it up in the office break room. And then people started asking a lot of questions, and I just became like this kind of health nut at the office.
Like a source for people.
Yeah, a source for people. And then, you know, every time we would go out to eat again, I'd still have to go to these fancy places, but I would always order not what was on the menu, but what was off the menu. Whatever I could get the chef to kind of create for me, like, hey, can you make this with just olive oil? Or can you make this with just some butter or whatever? Or, you know, hey, can you make a vegetarian plate like on the side with a ton of like sauteed vegetables instead of, you know, French fries or whatever else they were trying to serve. And so they would do this stuff. And I remember I was sitting with the C-level executive that reports to the CEO of one of the biggest financial institutions of this world, sitting with him at this casino steakhouse. And I was so nervous because it was every C-level executive around this table, along with me and a couple other minions, right? And I'm like whispering to the waiter, like, hey, I'm not gonna eat any of this. Like, this is what I want to order. And my food comes, and everybody looks at it, and it looks so different than everybody else's. The chef had created this masterpiece for me of all these fresh fruits and vegetables, and it was just nuts. And they're like, wait, hey, we want what she's having. And they, like, people, like some of the executives ordered an additional meal of what I was having because it looked so amazing. And it was really cool to have that kind of influence on the people around me. And then people were like, Vani, you need to start a blog or something to teach us what you're doing. And that is when Food Babe was born. I gave up television because, well, television's the devil, right?
These days especially.
Television is the devil. But I didn't really think that at the time. But I gave up television because I was like, shoot, I'm still traveling. I'm still working 60 hours a week. When am I going to find time to start this blog? So I gave up television for Lent, even though I'm not Catholic. And I started working on this blog. And I told my husband, who's a tech geek in the family, I said, hey, can you register this domain name for me? I want to call it eathealthyliveforever.com. And he's like, that is the stupidest name ever. No one's going to remember that. And about 10 minutes later, he came up with the name Food Babe. And he's like, it's $10 on auction. And I was like, what? I was like, no. And you know, at first I was like, that's kind of a catchy name. That's cute. Yeah. You know, but then I was like, well, I wasn't a food babe for most of my life. I don't want to be that egotistical, right? Like I was like, well, maybe it's about teaching others to become a food babe. And this is back in 2011. So this is 9 years ago. And we started Food Babe, and it was just fun to do. And I had these 3 cartoon characters as my header. I never had my photo on the blog for the first year and a half until I ended up quitting my job because I didn't want anyone to know it was me. I told a couple people at work that I knew that wouldn't like tell the big bosses, but I didn't want anyone to know it was me. But the problem with that is I couldn't keep my big mouth shut about what I was learning about the food industry. And my blog started to go viral. And I was like, oh crap, Chick-fil-A is calling me and Chipotle is calling me. And damn it, these companies are changing as a result of things that I'm discovering and writing about. Holy crap, this is my mission. This is my calling. Like, I need to stop working at the bank. And I was making zero money doing Food Babe. It was just because I was so passionate about sharing what I was learning about food with everybody, that this information was getting out. And I was scared out of my mind to quit my job. And I just remember I was on the top of Machu Picchu, and it was December 21st, 2012. It was the Mayan calendar's day the world was going to end. It was like the really auspicious day. And I was on top of Machu Picchu on my Christmas vacation with my husband. And I got an email that came through on my BlackBerry. This is old school, right? Like I had a BlackBerry.
I had one of those.
I'm really dating myself here. And and it came through, and I just happened to look at it when we were eating lunch, and it was like, your contract's ending at Bank of America. Would you like to renew it? And I just looked at my husband and I said, no, I don't want to renew it. I just want to get out of that and do Food Babe full time. What do you think? And I just expected him to say, how are we going to pay the mortgage? No, you've got to have a job, right? This food activism thing, like, this is not a job, right? But he was 100% on board. He looked at me and he's like, what have you been waiting for? And I couldn't believe that I had that, yes from him and the universe at that point. And so I got back from that vacation and I sat on my couch and I looked around, and we lived in this 2-bedroom apartment surrounding all the financial banks in Charlotte, in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina at the time. And I was looking down, and I was 11 floors up, and I was looking down, and everyone's going to work, and I'm like on the couch in my PJs. My husband's still going to work, and I'm like, holy crap. How are we going to pay? Yeah. How are we going to pay the mortgage? How are we going to do this? How am I going to figure this out? How am I going to still eat organic food? Right. Like, cause at that time, Costco wasn't selling organic food.
Yeah. It was expensive.
That didn't happen until many years later, and so it was like, you couldn't get organic food on a budget like you can today. So I said, I got to figure out how to eat organically. And so one of the first blog posts I wrote actually was 75 tips on how to eat organic on a budget, because I had to follow those rules myself in order to make it happen on the limited budget that we had. That, our budget got cut in half. So, basically, when I gave up my 60-hour work job and spent every waking moment thinking about how to change the food industry, my whole career changed. Everything started to fall into place. I got, a book deal that helped fund my work. I created meal plans for people that they've been asking for and sold those on Food Babe. And so it all worked out. And that was the beauty of, when you give back to the world, they give back to you. But what was so awesome is that I started to research what has been probably some of the best work that I think I've been able to provide people, which is comparing U.S. products to products being sold overseas and showing how our own American food companies are selling safer, better ingredients in the same exact products overseas for other countries and not for us. And the perfect example of that was actually Kraft. Kraft was selling mac and cheese, famous macaroni and cheese, to the UK with paprika and beta carotene to make it that bright yellow. And here in the United States, they were using yellow 5 and yellow 6 at the time. Wow. And so, go ahead.
Well, I know, it's not just because they have to label that in the U.S. and they don't, like, it's, you know, we're certain that it's not, they don't put that in the UK version of it.
Yeah, we're certain because it's not on the label, but the reason it's not on the label is because Europe requires a warning label when a company uses an artificial food dye. It says may cause adverse effects on activity and attention in children.
Wow.
Because of studies, it's a huge study called the Southampton study that they did in the UK. They found this relation between the use of artificial food dyes and hyperactivity in children. And so they said, you know what? we're going to warn parents because we want parents to know that there's this issue if their kids eat these additives. And these food companies said, okay, well, that's fine. If you want us to use this warning label, we won't. We'll just take out the bad ingredients and we'll put natural ingredients in so we don't have to warn anyone in the UK. But they continued to use the harmful chemicals here in the United States. And I wanted to point out that not only is this hypocritical, but completely unethical when a company knows that they can make their product safer and they don't for every single citizen. And so I started a petition to get Kraft to remove those artificial food dyes. It got over 350,000 signatures, and I delivered those signatures to the Kraft headquarters. I could spend the time to do this now that I didn't have a job, and went to their headquarters and met with Kraft, and eventually they removed the dyes.
Wow.
It was a long saga, but that is what happened. And it just goes to show you, like, when you point out these disparities and you take the time to show the public like what these food companies are getting away with, people respond not only with petition signatures, but I mean, people met me in Northfield, Illinois, where Kraft's headquarters are, and came out and petitioned outside of their headquarters to the point where they led call campaigns to get, like, call the Kraft headquarters, hey, let food babe in.
Wow.
And the news cameras were there, and it was so nuts. And I remember I went on their local Fox channel that morning too, and I was like, I brought all the petition signatures with me, and it was awesome because the newscaster like looks in the camera and says, Kraft, you better let Vani in today. I mean, it was so fun. It was fun, and it was impactful, and we did an amazing thing for the world because we educated Americans for the first time in history, I feel like, in a big way, with a product that they could recognize and see, and they probably have in their own pantries, about artificial food dyes. So when someone went and saw the package of Cheetos they were eating, or Doritos they were eating, or some other type of fruit roll-up or whatever, they'd look at it and say, hey, that's the yellow 5, yellow 6 that I learned about in Kraft that's, affecting my child. And that is something I need to avoid. And that was the whole point of the campaign, which is, and the point of every single campaign I've waged on many multi-billion-dollar food corporations has been to educate the public about ingredients so that they pay attention to ingredients. And now, 9 years later, we have such an amazing awareness. I feel like it's just growing and growing and growing every single day with people like you, Max, who constantly educate people about ingredients and nutrition and how to eat. That we have this community of people that it's just growing, and we're paying attention to what we're eating more than ever. I mean, we still have a lot of work to do, but this is how kind of that revolution started.
Yeah, I love it. In fact, that post of yours, or I guess it's a series of posts where you call out the differences in ingredients on this side of the pond compared to the other. I think I shared that recently on my Instagram. I loved it. And I grew up eating that Kraft mac and cheese. Like, that was one of my favorite things to eat. And thankfully, my mom had the fortitude and the foresight to not allow me to eat it as often as I would have liked when I was growing up. But I think I first became aware of your work. You went up against Subway, did you not?
Yeah.
Yeah, you made global headlines for calling out one of the ingredients that they use in their bread making that apparently or allegedly is also used in the making of yoga mats. Am I correct?
Yeah, it is. It's called azodicarbonamide, and it was a chemical they were using here in the United States, but not in other countries. It's a chemical that creates evenly dispersed air bubbles in products. So if you actually look at a rubber mat or a yoga mat or even your shoe rubber,
yeah,
and you turn it over and you kind of see those little air bubbles inside the yoga mat, or in your rubber shoe.
It looks like bread.
It's the same thing it does in bread. It's the same thing it does in bread. So they wanted the Subway bread to be like uniform every single time it's baked, because when you bake fresh bread, every time you cut it open and they have all these different air pockets, it looks totally random. It's beautiful, but it's not identical.
It's not
but
uniform.
With fast food,
Yeah, I spent time with a baker recently, and he said basically the same thing, that like the highest quality bread that you'll find, there's no uniformity. You've got these huge air bubbles, and that's a testament to, I don't know, the skill of the baker. So it's just funny that Subway would want their bread actually to look more like a yoga mat.
Exactly, and it's a cheaper way to create that look and feel, to use that chemical. And that chemical, unfortunately, if you use it in Singapore, you get fined $450,000. You get put in jail. It's banned all over the globe. I mean, even China won't use it, and it's something that causes asthma in people that use it. It's a carcinogen when it's heated, according to different scientific studies. And so this is a very alarming chemical. And, I had been researching and investigating Subway for almost a year before I started a petition to remove this chemical. And I was contacting them, I was emailing them, I was sending them my blog posts. I even filmed a video of me eating a yoga mat to make a point. I mean, I did everything to try to get their attention, and they just would not pay attention to me. And so then one day I was watching the news, and Michelle Obama went on the news, and it was during the Obama presidency. And she said, hey, I'm going to endorse Subway as safe for kids, and they're going to be part of the, Let's Move program and all of this. And I was like, no, she doesn't even know the truth about Subway. She thinks she's still eating fresh. She's eating yoga mat. And so I just got so upset, because I admired what she had done with, the organic garden at the White House and so many other things. And I was like, she doesn't even know. We have to educate people about this. I have got to start a petition. So I started a petition, and it went so viral that Subway responded within 24 hours or something. It was very quick. It was either 24 or 48 hours. And they said, hey, we're going to remove it. Someone actually within Subway forwarded me the CEO's message to the rest of the corporation before it even got out to the media that they were going to remove it, and was able to send that out to the media, and they reported on it. It was fantastic. It was great. But the best thing that ever happened as a result of that campaign is Subway went on to remove every artificial ingredient that they had. And then they also decided to go antibiotic free, which was a part of another campaign that I was part of. But on top of that, every single bread manufacturer in America has basically removed azodicarbonamide from their bread. There was over 500 products that you would find on grocery store bread shelves across the nation that had this chemical in it. I mean, almost every single bread maker had it. The Nature's Own, the Bimbo bakeries, all of the fancy bread, Arnold bread, every single major bread manufacturer had it in there, and they were forced to remove it. And it was just a beautiful thing to watch as a result of a campaign. And I think, the main goal of that campaign, Max, wasn't to just remove one chemical and say, like, Subway's healthy now or you're eating fresher. It wasn't about that. It was about, again, educating the public. Pay attention to the ingredients you're eating, right? What are you eating out there? How are you falling prey to the marketing campaigns of these fast food giants? You've got this guy, Jared, who's lost all this weight and then telling everyone they're eating fresh. I thought I was eating fresh for a really long time. I would go and get a Subway sandwich because it was under, 500 calories or whatever, and load it up with whatever and think that I was eating healthy. But that bread was anything but healthy. It had close to 50 ingredients in it. And so it was just this beautiful thing to watch for people to recognize that they're not eating fresh, that this is processed food, that they need to make their own damn sandwiches. And it was great. At that point in time, Subway was #1 worldwide in fast food. And now they've tumbled down quite a bit from that ranking as a result of that campaign, and just the widespread awareness of ingredients in food. And this is the millions and billions of dollars we've been able to impact at Food Babe. And it's really put me in a really interesting position, because it led me to actually write my second book, Feeding You Lies, the one I wrote right before Food Babe Kitchen. That one, I go into all of these different stories of how I took on these different corporations and the attacks that I received as a result from paid spokespeople by the food industry, that they would pay these scientists that looked independent and to discredit what I was saying, or to say, hey, there's no problem with eating azodicarbonamide. This chemical's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'm familiar with some of your haters. What's funny is that the more I see you get hate from those kinds of people online, the more I love you. Like, I'm so grateful to have like industry watchdogs such as yourself out there calling these companies out, because nobody else is going to do it. It's like that Margaret Mead quote. I love this quote so much. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because indeed it's the only thing that ever has. And without people like you, we would just continue to go about our lives with this veil, the cloth pulled over our eyes. But you have seen the matrix, and you're out there, taking risks, putting your neck, putting your credibility, your reputation on the line to increase transparency, which I think is so great. It's so important. And it's funny that we're talking about Subway right now, because recently it made headlines. Their bread made headlines again, right? Didn't the Irish government deem their bread not actually bread because it has so much sugar in it? Like,
yes,
just so funny. I posted about that, and I was like, we got to give a shout out to Vani, because like she's been calling them out for years, and she's gotten so much hate as a result for it, But now we have we have the freaking government of Ireland, basically saying the same thing.
Yeah, that was a really cool thing that they did. It's very rare that you see a government do something like that, so it's awesome.
Yeah. But like, I'm just curious, and I'm sure you cover this in Feeding You Lies, but are these companies not just coming at you left and right, like legally? Like, I'm sure you're protected, right?
Well, the best thing about everything that I've been able to write about has always been the truth. And so they haven't had any legal reason to attack me legally. And if they did, they would actually open themselves up to discovery. And they would never, ever want someone like me to have insight into how they make their ingredients, or how they make their decisions about their ingredients, or anything like that. So I've never been worried legally. Now, I have been worried about the front groups and the different organizations that they've hired, or have troll farms, etc., that they've deployed to try to discredit me. I mean, I've had, I tell this story about when I was invited to the University of Hawaii to speak. This group that was funded by Monsanto and Bayer and different chemical corporations and food corporations, this group basically said, hey, we should try to buy fake tickets or sign up for fake tickets at this event so that nobody comes to her event. And thankfully, the event realized that all of these were fake tickets, and were able to put a stop to it. And the event went on, and it was beautiful and packed, and there was like standing room only, and everything was fine. But this is the kind of dirty tactics they would use to try to stop this message from getting out. The message of, hey, we need to be aware of the chemicals in our food because the FDA is not looking out for us. I mean, there's this underlying assumption that every single chemical in our food has been tested by some third party, and the FDA doesn't have the bandwidth to do it. They never have. They actually rely on the food companies themselves to test these chemicals and approve them for use and submit the safety data, and they just kind of rubber stamp it. And that's how our food system now has over 10,000 chemicals that are largely invented for one sole purpose, and that's not to improve our health or nutrition. That's to improve the bottom line of the food industry. And so once you realize that these chemicals are not there for a nutritional purpose, like not to help me feel great, you don't want to be part of that anymore, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I started actually my new company, Vani, 2 years ago, selling protein powder and supplements, because I saw this actually happening in the supplement space where, the supplement space is even worse in terms of no regulation. I mean, the FDA doesn't even look at anything really with the supplement space other than very, very limited legal language and things like that. So I knew the things that I was taking on a normal basis were questionable. And then certain companies that, like, for example, my personal turmeric that I was taking for years got bought out by one of the big chemical corporations, Procter & Gamble. And they changed the ingredients right under my nose. Didn't say anything, no new formula package on the label or anything. They just changed the ingredients from a natural version to a synthetic version. And that killed me. I was like, this cannot happen. And so I just knew I needed to create my own line of supplements that I personally wanted to take, and my own protein powder without gar gum and xanthan gum and all the sweeteners that like leave that metallic taste in your mouth. And I just wanted to create the best products. And so that's one of the reasons why I went and did that. But I'll tell you this, it is not fun being who I am and trying to start a company, because I am the person that is in charge of ingredients and products at my company. And I have to constantly be the person that says, no, we can't move forward with a product, because there's so many things that food manufacturers and ingredient manufacturers and suppliers of ingredients hide in the production of their actual ingredients that don't even belong on a label, that I've found out as a result of creating my own products, that it's astounding. And you have to ask the most minute question about a certain ingredient or chemical to get the right answer. And you can find out things that you weren't expecting, like, oh, the oil we're using as a carrier to do our omega supplement is extracted with hexane? Like, what? No, we can't do that product, right? And I had to cancel a product even though it was 6 months in development and we were ready to sign a PO, finding that out at the last minute. Or finding out, hey, we have this amazing bone broth product, right? And oh, they want to change the chicken supplier, and they're going to be like, it's almost like a caged environment, even though they say cage free, but you take a look and see what they're doing. No, we can't do that anymore, right? We had to cancel a whole product because of that we had already been selling. So all of these stories and things that I'm working on now with Vani, and my life as an activist, continues to be tough. And what I realized by taking on the food industry, and I'm still doing it because I still have an open petition actually on Kellogg's, because Kellogg's said they were going to remove artificial food dyes in all their products by 2018. It's now 2020, actually the end of 2020. They haven't done it. They keep creating new products. They have a new product out this year in the middle of a pandemic called unicorn waffles and mermaid waffles. They're the same makers as Eggos. And they're like, you know what? Eggos aren't selling with kids anymore. So let's just directly target them and, brightly dye this stuff with artificial food dyes that are, again, linked to hyperactivity, affect children's immune systems, allergies, asthma, and skin issues. And, you've got this company that said they were going to make this commitment. They completely disregard it and instead create new products. Anyways, I have a petition that's live on FoodBabe right now, foodbabe.com/babyshark. And it's Baby Shark because they came out with a new Baby Shark cereal that's with artificial food dyes directly targeting toddlers this year as well, or late last year, actually. And anyways, if you want to go sign it and take on Kellogg's, I am going to go deliver those petitions. I am pregnant right now, so maybe after I give birth to this baby and things get a little bit less crazy with the travel restrictions that are happening right now. But it's, I continue this work, and I just continuously open my eyes, and I come back to this one main philosophy for everyone to follow, Max, and I know you agree with this, is that, like, in order to like really take control of your health, you have to know what you're eating. You have to know the ingredients. And in order for you to know the ingredients, you have to know how to cook something in your kitchen, right? And nobody taught me how to cook, right? Nobody taught me because, again, I had two Indian parents who came here with nothing, and they raised me to learn about two things, math and science. They're like, you're either going to be an engineer or you're going to be a doctor. I ended up going to the School of Engineering and majoring in computer science. But, you know, that's what I was taught when I was little. It was not like how to make anything in the kitchen or do anything or help my mom. It was like, get out of the kitchen and study. And so when I was going through this health crisis in my early 20s and trying to figure this stuff out and reading those books and everything, I had to start learning how to navigate the kitchen. And that's why this book, Food Babe Kitchen, that I just came out with, is just so personal to me, because the first 55 pages are how to stock your kitchen with the best ingredients, how to do a pantry purge so you can get out all those awful ingredients like azodicarbonamide and artificial food dyes and all that stuff out of your kitchen, so you're not even cooking with it in the first place, because it enters everywhere. And then how to do a grocery store run where you're going through every single aisle and you're picking the best product in every aisle that's for your health. And what to do when you're cooking, which pans and pots to use that don't leach chemicals into your food, how to store your food so you're not, again, destroying the nutritional qualities of your food, and how to warm your food up without, using a microwave and things like that. And just little tricks and tips on how to freeze things so that you're not always in your kitchen making stuff. Like, I've never been a person that's like can spend all day in the kitchen. I don't know, Max, are you one of those people? Can you spend all day in the kitchen?
Typically no, but these days I feel like I do spend all day in the kitchen because I'm spending a lot of time home, and so it's been a problem. But no, I prefer recipes that are quick and easy when I'm cooking.
So I'm the same way. Like, I'd rather be doing my activism work, creating a new product, doing something like that, than spending all day in the kitchen. And so all my recipes are really easy to make. There's actually a recipe that didn't make it because it takes 4 days to make, and that was homemade croissants. You have to proof the dough, and you have to keep folding it and doing all this crazy, these crazy pastry techniques to get a good croissant. And I was like, I'm not going to put a bad croissant in this book. So everything is within 30 minutes to an hour. And it's like, you can get the most amazing, healthy food on the table for you and your family. And a lot of these recipes are freezer friendly, so you can make it in a batch and have it ready to go. And you don't have to be cooking all the time. And when you meal plan, which is an amazing skill to have, because I tell you, if you meal plan at the beginning of the week, you kind of just jot down roughly what you're going to be eating, you're going to set yourself up with success, because you're going to have the opportunity to not have the opportunity to say, you know what, I haven't prepared anything. I can just go through and order Postmates, or go through the takeout line or the fast food drive-through.
Yeah, meal prepping is an amazing way to reduce food waste, to save money, to reach your health goals. And you mentioned that it was instrumental for you, right, at the very beginning of your health journey, bringing all your Tupperware or whatever into the into that office with you. What would you? So there's I guess a criticism that many people in the natural food space get when throwing around the word chemical, is that everything is a chemical. But the goal for you is not so that people become, these constantly afraid and on edge about everything that they're putting in their mouth. It's just about transparency, informed consent, greater awareness, things like that, right? And it's not all chemicals. It's very specifically industrial chemicals that are created by food manufacturers to increase the bottom line. Is that an accurate statement?
That is an accurate statement. So, this is a 3-question detox that I tell everyone they need to go through when they sit down to eat. And if you do this simple task every single time you sit down to eat, not only will you become more educated about ingredients, you might become your own nutritionist, you'll really understand what you're eating, and you will make better choices. And the first question is, what are the ingredients? What are you actually eating? right? And you need to understand what you're eating. If you're eating a piece of bread and it has the ingredient monodiglycerides in it, what the hell does that mean? You need to go find out. You need to go do the Google and find out what that is. And if you don't know what it is, and then, you can always come to foodbabe.com. I have a nice food additive glossary there for you. You can come to Food Babe Kitchen, the cookbook, if you get it, and it has a reference guide in there, and find out what that chemical is. And you'll find out that that's actually an emulsifier ingredient that food manufacturers use in the production of crackers and breads and other things. And it has minute amounts of trans fats to help oils not go rancid in a product that's a processed product and stay longer on shelves. Well, a minute amount of trans fats, that's not good. The FDA banned trans fats because it's linked to 20,000 heart attacks and 7,000 deaths. So right then and there that ingredient, maybe not be, it probably is something I shouldn't be eating. So that leads to the next question, which is, are these ingredients nutritious? Well, based on your research of that ingredient that you're eating, you're going to know that's not nutritious. That's not there for a nutritional purpose for my body. So why am I choosing to buy this bread with this nasty chemical in it, right? And then the third question is, where do these ingredients come from, right? And this goes along with, not only is it coming from a chemical factory, like in the case of monodiglycerides, or is it coming from a factory farm if you're eating a piece of meat? How was that piece of meat raised? Was it raised on antibiotics or growth hormone, or in a very unfavorable condition where, they're being fed a lot of GMO corn and soy that's doused with Roundup, which is now implicated in causing cancer in dozens of lawsuits across the country? Is this something that I want to be eating? You'll become an expert at what you're eating just by asking those three questions every time you sit down to eat. What are the ingredients? Are these ingredients nutritious? And where do these ingredients come from? And you don't have to be a nutritionist or be doing this for 9 years like me, or someone like you, Max, who've written so many amazing best-selling books. You don't have to be us. You can be a normal everyday person and use common sense and research to figure this information out.
Yeah, I think it comes down to curiosity too. I think people need to cultivate a curiosity about what it is that they're putting into their face. That's how, for me, this all began. I was just curious if what you eat becomes who you are, then I think you ought to know what it is that what it is that you're putting in your mouth. And that's not to say that we should become obsessed, or that it should negatively affect our relationship with food, which I know many people struggle with, unhealthy relationships with food. But I think when it comes to, it's a term that I love to use, informed consent. People ought to know what they're putting in their mouths and how those ingredients ultimately are going to affect your health. Because it's not like we go to school for this, right? It's not like we're taught this in grade school. We don't have a required 101 course in college that teaches us. The only way for you to be able to know any of this stuff is for you to seek out the information for yourself, not just to trust that somehow, that knowledge is going to magically manifest because of the media or the food industry or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I love your book. It's beautiful, and I feel like I could talk to you for hours just because I'm just fascinated by your story. I actually have an interesting sort of anecdote of my own. I wrote a blog post a couple of years ago about one of my favorite salad chains, Sweetgreen, and the fact that their dressings all use grapeseed oil as the primary oil ingredient. And I wrote this blog on my website, maxlugavere.com, where people can see why I think this is not the healthiest choice for you. Even though Sweetgreen, you can go and get, they have lots of organic options, and you can obviously make your own salad dressing. But I just found out that they're actually replacing it with the grapeseed oil with high oleic sunflower oil, which is not as good as extra virgin olive oil, but it's a step in the right direction. So it just goes to show you that people, you can make a difference. You are just one drop in an endless ocean, but what is an ocean but a multitude of drops,
Yeah, so that's amazing.
It's an empowering message. We don't have that much time left, but before we wrap up, where can listeners find you on social media, and where can they pick up your new book, Food Babe Kitchen?
Well, you can come over to foodbabekitchen.com. I'm giving away a pantry list of every single thing that's in my pantry once you order the book, and you can get the book anywhere. where books are sold, just Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. And you can also come over to foodbabe.com and join the Food Babe Army, because we're up to some really fun things.
That's so cool that you have this that you have this community. What's next for you? What's like? I mean, aside from the book, you're going up against Kellogg's. That's like
that's the next big thing that I need to make sure we win. And it's going to be an important win once I kind of get this baby out of me. Both babies, the cookbook and the real baby.
Exactly.
And then, I have another book idea that I want to start working on. So that's going to be happening. And we are entering another segment at True Vani. We're going to be going into, I'm just going to say it, I'm going to debut it right here on your show, Max. We're going to be going into personal care in 2021. So it's going to be pretty awesome. And I'm really excited about what we've created, because we're creating the world-class, safest products out there, with the least amount of unnecessary chemicals. And it's amazing what we're up to, and the standards of products that we're creating. And when I started True Vani, it was because I really wanted to affect the industry from within. And I know, just even for what we've created so far, there's so many copycats out there that are kind of doing what we're doing, and they're removing a lot of the chemicals we've already removed. And I hope everybody copies us, because that's what I wish to see in the world. I just want safe, beautiful products for everybody to have access to, and that's the goal. So
yeah, I love that. There's a great documentary called Toxic Beauty. Have you seen it?
Yes.
All about this. Yeah, it's just crazy, Like, there's so many instances where industry has just foisted, these newfangled creations onto the public, and it's only after millions of people have been exposed that we then see the consequences of that. It talks about Johnson & Johnson and how Johnson & Johnson was so resistant to removing their baby powders from shelves, even though it was made with talc that is very frequently contaminated with asbestos. And so boys and girls, and men and women, they put it on their nether regions, and we were seeing in women an uptick in incidences of certain types of cancer, like cancers of the reproductive system. So now, finally, I believe it's been banned. But the point is that industry is very resistant, especially when a product is printing money, as they so frequently do. And you really owe it to yourself and your health to be skeptical about every little thing. And once you have this information, once you learn, you have it forever. So it's not like you have to it's not like you're constantly sort of on high alert and obsessed. It's just a little sort of, you get into this sort of way of thinking, and you do that initial research, and then from then on, you sort of operate on autopilot. It's a pretty beautiful thing.
It really is.
Yeah. Well, the last question that gets asked to everybody on the show, Vani, curious to hear your answer. What does it mean to you to live a genius life?
To make your health your number one priority.
I like that. Short and sweet.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much for being here. Food Babe Kitchen, beautiful book, packed with delicious recipes. I'm going to email you offline because I do want that croissant recipe. Is it like a gluten-free? Like, what's the...
No, it has all the gluten.
It has all the gluten.
It's got all the gluten. But the best thing about it is that it's all organic ingredients, and you can freeze the dough. So you can, like, if like you have a guest over, or you want to make croissants one day, you can just pop them out and have organic croissants on demand. That's the idea of them. And it didn't make it into this book, but it's so funny. I feel like everyone's going to be emailing me for this recipe now. And I'm like, I didn't think anybody wanted to spend 4 days with this dough to make it work. But it sounds like you do. So,
I mean, well, after you mentioned it on my podcast, I'm sure people are going to be like, I want that recipe.
All right. Well, I have to just put that as a bonus on Food Babe Kitchen.
But everything looks so good. Buffalo cauliflower bites, healing turmeric hummus. So great. So great. Thanks for being you, and for, sticking it to the man, and for, staying strong in the face of, all the hate that I'm sure that you get from social media. Like we all get it, but I respect you very much because you stand firm in your values, in your beliefs, and I think we need more people like you, especially today. So keep it up. Keep up the good work, Vani.
Thank you so much, Max.
To all you guys out there in podcast land, thanks for tuning in. Share this episode of the show. Let me know what you thought about it. You can do that by texting me at 310-299-9401. And I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.